the Extraordinary Acts for Others podcast, brought to you by the extraordinary friends here at Freedom's Ring. We are excited to celebrate the extraordinary goodness being done right here in our extraordinary country by some truly extraordinary people. It is our sincere hope that we will excite your spirit, and after listening to today's podcast, you will excitedly go out and do your own extraordinary acts for others in your community. Are you ready? Let's get excited. Thank you so much for joining us on this last episode of the Extraordinary Acts for Others podcast of the season. We are so thankful for everyone who has joined us throughout the season, and especially for those of you who have caught us on every episode. We really appreciate it. We love that you're spreading the word and helping us grow. This week, our extraordinary guest is Samuel Bistrian. He is the founder of Roma Boots, who has also quite an amazing story. He grew up in communist-controlled Romania with 11 siblings, then immigrated with his family to America when he was only 8 years old. Later on in 2010, in the midst of the recession, he decided that he was going to start Roma Boots following the Tom model of buy one pair and give one pair. And he chose rain boots because of the durability and the need that children have to be able to be out in bad weather with good shoes to help protect them. And also the fact that rain boots are able to be passed down and go child to child. This all started by gifting the set that after people bought one, gifting ones to his home village in Romania. So it's quite the story. But before we get to that conversation, we have the 3 things to know about Freedom's Ring. First, this podcast is going on summer vacation as we prepare as a family for a PCS and getting our young kids settled with new friends and everything. But we will resume after Labor Day in September. While we do go on break, be sure to follow at Freedom's Ring USA on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to follow extraordinary acts for others people are doing around the country every day. And you'll get to see some of the things that we do as an organization and the friends, the members that we have, the service that they do as well. And finally, we hope that you enjoy your summer and that you get to spend a little bit of your time serving and doing your own extraordinary acts for others in your community. Service is such a great way to bring meaning to your days, and a meaningful life is so rewarding. So we definitely want to encourage you to use part of your summer, especially if you have young kids with you, to go out and serve in your community. As always, please go to freedomsringusa.org where you can become a member. It's always free, but that's where you can enter the ring, become a friend, and join our family. Again, it's always free with no obligations, but we just know that the more you get involved, the more you serve in your community, the more your community feels like home. So with that, here's our conversation with Samuel Bistrian, founder and CEO of Roma Boots.
I was born in Romania in a small village with 11 other siblings. I'm the 9th of 12. I found out a few years ago that we were the poorest family in this village. About 2 hours away from Budapest, about 45 minutes away from Timișoara, which is where the revolution started in 1989. And right after the revolution, actually, my family and I had the chance to come to the U.S. So I was 8 years old at the time. I guess if I could rewind a couple years prior to that, I received my first pair of rain boots that were handed down from older siblings, which was very interesting because I still remember the color and I remember what they meant to me. Never did I imagine that this whole thing will come full circle and I will be donating boots to other kids in poverty, rain boots of all things. And so fast forward, we moved from this village of 100 people. We were 10% of the village to Chicago being the 3rd largest city in the U.S. We're living in a high-rise apartment in inner city Chicago in the early 90s, which was quite a transition, not only because it was the largest city or 3rd largest city in the U.S., but early 90s Chicago was very violent. It still is some parts, south side, but we couldn't really go out. We couldn't do a whole lot. It was winter time. You know how brutal winters are in Chicago. And so it was quite a shock for us. After a couple of years being there, my parents visited Knoxville, Tennessee. They loved it. It was more mellow, more laid back. Reminded them somewhat of home, and we moved there because they liked it, and we were offered government housing, so projects essentially. We didn't know what a wake up call that would be, because in the projects you had whites and you had blacks and then you had the Romanians. So that was very, very hard. Kids weren't used to foreigners. So that became even more difficult than Chicago, I would say. But it was all good. All those things worked out for our good and for building in us a character that would help us to make it, in the U.S. Eventually, we were able to obtain a house through Habitat for Humanity. And after high school, each sibling moved to Dallas to go to school. And then eventually I moved to Dallas and went to school. Just to go back a second, most siblings, as they graduated college in Dallas, moved to Romania. One to start an orphanage, another one to start a school. And after college, I moved to Colombia. I did this mission called Youth with a Mission, where I lived in Colombia for 3 months, and then I did my outreach in Cuba and Panama. And that's when I realized that I wanted to do this full time. I'm like, man, I wish I could just do missions, humanitarian work with kids, and serve. But I also knew that I cannot necessarily depend on people to support me. And I knew that God had given me a brain. A few months later, I finished that, and my girlfriend at the time moved to France. She's French Colombian, and I followed her to France, and I was going to actually study there or continue my studies. But I didn't quite acclimate, so I moved back to Dallas, and I moved back to Dallas to continue my studies here. And then I started working for a department store called Neiman Marcus, and I learned a lot there, and I kind of moved up the ladder there. I started by unloading boxes, and then I moved into management, and I would take these trips to Romania and then eventually to Colombia. My wife or my girlfriend and I got married. I kept thinking, man, I wish I could do what I felt like I wanted to do before I got married, and help these kids living in poverty. And here I am now stuck in this 9-to-5, 9-to-6 job. Really more than that, because as a manager in retail, I worked nonstop, especially during the holidays. And I'm like, I got to make a change. So in 2008, just as the economic collapse was taking place, I left Neiman Marcus, wrote a book, and just took a year break, did some soul searching. And it's during that time that I said, I gotta make a change here. And sure enough, after a year of not making that much money, and here we are in a recession, I got a call from Neiman Marcus, and I went right back. Well, it all happened for a reason, because when I went back to Neiman Marcus, that's when I was able to meet the founder of Tom's. He was launching Tom's and Neiman's. And I'm like, man, that's really interesting. Well, do you do anything in Romania, or do you do anything other than footwear? And obviously, he didn't do either. And so I'm like, well, why don't I do it? I thought to myself, here we are in a recession. I had just sold my house, because we couldn't really make ends meet. And I had 2 daughters at this time, my wife to support, and something in me is telling me that there's more. I have to do more. And so I knew I went back to Neiman Marcus for a short time. I knew I wasn't going back for a long time. I knew that. I just knew that in my gut. So after meeting Blake and seeing what he does, I'm like, man, I would love to be able to combine my love of fashion with philanthropy and do something to give back. So I decided that things are never going to be perfect. I said, I'm going to finish my season here, and I'm just going to go into it. And so that's what I did. The following year, April 3rd, 2010, I started Roma Boots with very little experience, with a lot of discouragement from my executives, even at Neiman's. They said, hey, it's the worst time to start a business. We're in 2010. We're in the middle of a recession. This thing's not going to work. And so my heart, I knew I had to do it. So I started Roma, and Roma is Amor, spelled backwards, which Amor means love. And I said, hey, if this thing is really motivated by love, it's. And I had really no money. I had $40,000 in student loans, credit card debt, $5,000 in my bank account, and that's it. So I was like, well, I got to come up with money to start a company. I had a friend that I knew from college that lived in China. And after reaching out to a lot of different, different people, I was looking to produce in Brazil or Romania, because the idea was to try to create jobs also with this in Romania. I got the most responses from China, so I flew to China and visited several factories until we found a factory that we believed in. I still work with them to this day. They've donated boots now on behalf of Roma to World Vision China. It's amazing how that whole thing came about. And here we are, 9 years plus, giving poverty the boot. 28 countries. We've been featured all over the media. We've never really solicited any media attention, but I think we were very transparent from the very beginning. We said we want to be able to produce good quality boots, sell them, and donate boots. Many years we donated more than we sold just because the need was so great. And I thought it was going to be just Romania. Little did I know that, there's a need for boots around the world. And it's really been a labor of love. It's been a great evolution from this small idea to help kids in need, to also be able to develop a brand that has a 5-star rating on quality and comfort and fashion, being featured not only in Entrepreneur magazine but Fashion magazine. And it's really neat. And I think I learned a lot of that in Siemens, that I was able to implement with Roma. But it's been fun. I have a book coming out this year. I have a docudrama coming out later on this year, and doors continue to open, but we've never lost sight of what this thing is all about, and that's really to change the way people think, to make this world a better place, and to spread the love of God to everybody that we come in contact with. I think that's what motivates us.
That's
Roma,
beautiful.
love, you for all. So I told you I'm long-winded, so you got to interrupt me.
Is Romania really rainy, or what's the climate there? Or how did the rain boot become your outlet there?
Think about it. If you want to choose a product that makes the most sense, you're pretty not going to think a winter boot, nor you're going to think a flip-flop, right? Rain boots, unless you live in dry and warm climates, you need rain boots, right? So most kids at least most kids in poverty, they live in rural areas. So whether it's walking through the mountains or through the fields or in a ghetto, or you need something to protect your feet, from volcanic ash or from other diseases in different tropical climates, that come in, hookworms that come in through moisture. So yeah, a pair of canvas shoes, get wet and then they become a haven for bacteria. You can't really wear them, they get very uncomfortable. A pair of flip-flops are great, where it doesn't rain and you can just slip them on all the time. So I feel like rain boots were probably the most protective. And I know that I've traveled the world and I see kids in rain boots, all the time. And, they're very good. I've seen kids in Crocs, but then you think about it, if it gets wet or anything, your Crocs, don't really serve you that well. I've seen kids wearing Toms and then Toms falling apart. They have them for a couple of weeks, but kids wear them hard, Now with the rain boots, what I've seen is we've donated boots to certain communities, and then we'll go back into a community the following year. The kids have grown out of their rain boots and they've passed their boots to their younger siblings, So it just makes more sense.
Well, and I thought about that too, because we have 3 kids and our youngest is wearing the same rain boots that our oldest did. And when I was doing research for this, I kind of saw rain boots have a long life, and also in a fashion sense, they tend to have a longer life as well.
Yeah. No, they make sense. They make a lot of sense. And I'm glad that they've had this, they become this niche, product, which is really nice to see that, you could do a lot with rubber, and there's yeah, there's leather and there's PVC, but I like natural rubber, and we worked well with it. And we sell our Chelsea boots all the time. It doesn't even have to rain. It's comfortable. We're known for comfortable rain boots. So on a sunny day, now that we launched the men's Chelsea line, I wear mine all the time. Like if I travel, it's my go-to boot because they're so comfortable and easy to slip on and off. And it's perfect if it rains. If it doesn't, they're just as good, So
When you were studying at school, were you a business major or did you do fashion or?
no, so communications.
Okay.
But like I wish I would have taken a business or marketing class because it would have probably served me well. I did that later. I took some courses to learn, but yeah, when I started Roma, it was pure passion and almost to a fault, but all things work out eventually. I learned a lot of things the hard way, but it's all right. Sometimes
Well,
that's
and
what
you
it
mentioned
takes.
in your story that you started this in the recession. You had just sold your house, trying to make ends meet, still having student loan debt and credit card debt. Why was it important to you to found a company that is using part of its profits and part of its money to give back and to serve others?
Well, that's the reason I started it, right? I mean, I'm sure at this point, maybe there's other companies I could start or do other things, and then because I learned so much with this. But the very idea of starting Roma was to help kids living in poverty. I remember wanting to start something back in 2006, and I was like, man, I want to help kids with shoes, proper footwear in Romania. That was something. That's before I even heard about the one-for-one concept. And so yeah, I wanted to be able to, again, do something that's sustainable, do something that I could both earn a living, take care of my family, and give back and help kids. So, I mean, that's the crux of everything I want to do. So, and part of it is, spreading God's love, especially with people that are in need.
Is there something specific that your parents had ingrained into the family that your siblings had even gone off and done their own service?
Yes, I think a sense of gratitude was something that they instilled in us. I had no idea how poor we were. Like I told you, I found out that we were the poorest a couple of years ago at my dad's funeral in Benesht, which is the village where I was born. But I didn't know we were so poor because my parents always, had this joy, hope, sense of purpose they instilled in us, but a sense of gratitude. And even as kids, we were taught to give, to help those in need. If somebody needed something, help them, And so I think that gratitude created in us a sense of compassion, and not only compassion, but a moral duty to do something. We were given an opportunity to leave this poor country, the small village, and have really the privilege to be able to live in the U.S. I think a lot of people don't realize what a privilege that is, and to be able to do anything that you want to. Yes, yes, I think that they instilled in us that sense of giving back, and because my parents, I think besides anything else, they're believers, in Jesus Christ, and I think we have no better example of the most compassionate, giving person, in the world but Jesus. The best example of love is Jesus. Know, and so I think that being true believers in Jesus Christ and trying to emulate what Jesus has done, they pass that on to us, and I pass that on to my kids, and so on and so forth. Because I don't think anybody can um, disagree that Jesus is the most compassionate, most giving, most loving, most inspiring person to have ever lived.
You talked about that you had young daughters at the time and that they've grown with this. Have they gotten involved in any ways? Are they able to go on some of these trips with you or to see?
I've taken my wife, I've taken my daughters. They modeled early on. They've helped me pack boxes. They've helped me ship orders. They've helped me with design, with input. Yeah, it's been cool to have the family involved.
Going back to your mission trips that you were doing in college, did you get a sense that that was doing something different than your peers at the time, or what else fueled you to spend your spring breaks or your summer vacation time to go and to some of these harsher countries to give back?
No, ever since I was a kid, I've always had like a sense um, of justice, and injustice bothered me, and I always felt like um, I was moved even when I was in high school or middle school by the war in Kosovo, and things always bothered me. I remember being on spring break with all my friends, and we're all partying and having a good time, and I'm like, man, there's a war. How can I enjoy what we're doing in Daytona? How can I, this was like, there's a war going on. People are hurting, and they all kind of laughed at me and mocked me at the time, but it just bothered me what was happening around the world, like, I'm like, man, people are really suffering and hurting. And I've always, been bothered by that. And I don't care if they're in the US or if they're in Syria or whether they're in Romania or Bosnia, it doesn't matter. If people are hurting, I should, hurt with them as a, fellow human, and I think that that's what's always moved me. Doesn't mean that, I don't want to have a good time or I don't want to enjoy life, but I can really enjoy life when 300 people get blown up on Easter Sunday, in Sri Lanka, and I'm like, oh, just go on about my day like it's just another day, just because I'm not there. I think all of us should hurt. We don't want to be so callous to the needs of the poor and the oppressed and the hurting that we can just turn a blind eye or tune it out. I think that's a very dangerous place to be.
How do you keep yourself focused on thinking about poverty as being such a big issue and saying that I do have an ability to help someone, that trying to kick poverty or give poverty the boot, but then saying like, okay, I'm definitely not going to touch everyone who's in poverty, but man, I can keep growing and growing and keep helping more and more people as we grow?
It's because my prayer from the very beginning, it was anybody and everybody who comes in contact with Roma Boots, whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're a PR company, whether you're somebody that bought the boots, somebody that's receiving the boots, that everybody will be inspired by what we do and will be able to benefit from having come in contact with us. Will experience hope and love. And I think that that's what we want to transmit all the time: hope and love, because that's what we're all about, and if we truly are, we're like a conduit of that, then anybody is going to be affected by what we do. So we tell people, start simple. Giving poverty the boot is all about eradicating poverty as a mental condition and then as a physical condition. So we want to educate, right? So, hey, you may not be able to buy a pair of boots or donate a pair of boots, but you can smile to somebody. You can open the door for somebody. You can offer somebody a coffee or anything, any act of kindness, any random act of kindness is enough to start giving poverty the boot, I've seen the poorest people being the kindest people, So those people in my eyes are not poor. Those people are rich. And I've seen the wealthiest people being greedy and ugly and mean. Those people are poor, And so yeah, the whole idea for me of giving poverty the boot is, to be kind and spread hope and love. I mean, it's that simple.
I saw where you guys, along with the one-on-one program, you also do work with educating, like you mentioned. Do you do formal work with education schools?
So we built a learning center in Romania. We've helped build another one in Guatemala, and we've also provided funds for other ones. We bought school supplies. We see needs that they have. We knew that by giving a pair of boots away will never eradicate poverty. We need to educate, the mind, and we need to also help them with the educational needs, different educational initiatives. And so Yeah, the idea with Roma Foundation, not Roma Boots as a brand, but Roma Foundation, is to be able to develop that more and more. And right now, we're not where we want to be with that, but it's part of our vision.
When people talk about business, they often talk about how the road to any success isn't just a straight line up. Can you think of any big breaks that you had as you started this business and to where you are now, or things that just kind of were magical blessings to your business growth?
Oh, so many setbacks, so many mistakes, but then so many blessings, for sure. I mean, I can tell you that, that I think we would be on the Today Show, Good Morning America, and the way those things happen were just by accident. But then look in retrospect, I can see everything was divinely engineered. I opened my mouth, to tell one of my clients I'm leaving Neiman Marcus to start a company. And she's like, I want to help you with the logo. I want to help you with the design. I'm like, okay, sure. I want to help you develop this. I take a random phone call as I'm getting ready to get on a flight, and somebody's like, hey, I want to talk to you about, having your brand on Good Morning America. And then we're on twice a year since 2014, just over and over, just the things that happen, how they happen, and then you're like, wow. And sometimes you want to give up, you persist, you push forward a little bit more, and you're like, I don't know if this is God saying don't do it, because it's like things are just not working out. And then you push just a little bit more, and it's like, bam, things open up. You have investors that later end up putting pressure on you, and you want to give up, you want to quit, you want to let it implode, and then it's like, no, it's I don't have to give up just yet, and then you end up saying, I'm going to buy you out. How am I going to buy them out? And then miracles happen and you're able to buy them out. I mean, there's all kinds of things that have happened, but the biggest miracle is that children's lives are transformed. They really are. You go into these communities, and so many times I would want to give up, and I'm like, let me just go on a boot drop, on another boot drop. And I go, I get rejuvenated, I get revived. And, it's just been, that's how I would keep on going, because of the fact that I would see what the boots are able to inspire in the lives of these kids and how their lives would be transformed.
When you're in, I guess, different networking opportunities, or when you're in your different business groups, have you noticed a growth in companies that have some sort of social mission?
Yes. And some are doing it authentically, and they're doing a great job, and kudos to them, for really finding a problem, and then or identifying a problem and finding a solution. And shame on the ones that are using it as a marketing gimmick, and many of them are, and that discredits the ones that are doing it for the right reason, and it's just the way it's going to be. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think every company should have some sort of giving back, even if it's just a small percentage of their sales. They should give back. It's better to give than to receive. And the world would be a much better place. You never want to create a sense of entitlement. But you do want to be able to teach people, hey, give. And there's a lot of need out there. I know that if you just teach people to receive because you're giving them and giving them, that's not a good thing. You want to be strategic. You want to be wise on how those funds are used, and we don't want to just give boots away. That's not just our mission, We want to educate. And that's why we always said, you give a man a fish, you feed him for the day. You teach him how to fish, you feed him. You want to teach them how to fish.
When you do your boot drops, what are some of those strategic elements that you have for that? Do you go to the same villages, or do you try to go to different?
Well, yeah, we don't even do them anymore. So we've gone to a point where we just cannot manage that. We do these promotional boot drops sometimes. We obviously have connections in some of these countries that we've been to, but most of our boot drops, 90%, if not more, of the boots that we donate are through major NGOs like World Vision, Global Aid Network, Buckner, and so they have a need for boots in this country or that country. And we say, okay, let's look at what we can do. And so we'll plan them month out. And so, I mean, like in Q1, basically, we had 5,000 boots that went to Nicaragua via World Vision, another 5,000 to Guatemala, also via World Vision, another 5,000 went to Syria, to Syrian refugees, in Jordan with the Global Aid Network, and that was planned out over a year ago. And then another 5,000 went to Australia to Aboriginal children via different, organizations. So they then distribute those boots along with other aid and whatnot. They have communities that they know the boots are needed. So that's how it's done. And we ensure that those boots are now resold. We ensure that those boots are actually going to the poorest children, the ones that actually need them. And that's critical.
Do you do anything locally?
Yes, absolutely. Locally meaning in the U.S. or in
Either
Dallas?
One. Yeah.
Yeah, stuff in the U.S., including Dallas, yeah.
Okay.
And we continue to do.
What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur who's debating on having a give back program or some sort of philanthropy part of their business?
My advice would be start with love, keep it simple, run a tight ship. You want to be frugal and persevere. Don't give up, because that's the hardest thing, is to keep going when things get tough. And you know what? You just keep pushing through, and then eventually there will be light at the end of the tunnel. You want to quit so many times. I've wanted to quit. I've made mistakes. I've been screwed over. But you just keep fighting and keep pushing. You fight the good fight, and in the end, you'll get that crown of glory.
What's it like for you, the founder and business owner, to say, like, when you're giving out 5,000 boots here and 5,000 boots there, that means that 5,000 people have purchased and that people are endorsing your product, and you're then able to give it and use it to serve?
I think about it, and I'm grateful. I mean, sometimes I lose perspective, and I'm like, oh, it's just like, oh, we just donated 5,000 boots. But yeah, it's over 20,000 people, children, have a better life as a result of Roma this year alone. Yeah, that's pretty big. Sometimes I don't even look at the quantity. I'm just, I'm happy that we did it, but yeah, it's a big thing. And I'm grateful. I'm thankful to God that he's using me like that, or using Roma like that. And yeah, again, I'm just, I guess once I think deeper about it, I'm just very grateful that this young kid from Romania, a peasant per se, who grew up with nothing, lived on welfare. I didn't have a huge high GPA, 3.1 GPA or 3.2, but look, I'm being used, to help people, and I'm grateful for that. I really am.
It's been amazing to hear about your story and how Roma is doing so much and showing love to people. Is there anything else about your story or Roma's story that we haven't covered, or that doesn't get enough coverage, that you'd like to share?
I have a great team. I have a great support base, fans, and people believed in us. And I think I'm grateful for that. I didn't mention that, but yeah, it's a huge blessing. I have two adorable daughters that just keep motivating me, and they're part of every detail of my life. And one is 15, or will be 15 in June. The other one is going to be 12 in September. And I have a beautiful wife of 16 years in December of this year. So yeah, that keeps me going.
Well, thank you, Samuel, for being our extraordinary guest today. It is amazing how you are succeeding in business by using your business to serve others. It's a great example to show just how good business could do in our communities here in the United States and around the world. So to learn more about Roma Boots, or to order a pair yourself, please visit romaboots.com. So now it's time to share some spirited stories of extraordinary acts for others that are happening right here in our very extraordinary country. We celebrate the goodness around us because we know, we say it a lot, that when we appreciate goodness, we are more likely to act in goodness. So whenever you see good news stories around, don't be afraid. Tag at Freedom's Ring USA or use the hashtag Extraordinary Acts for Others. Our first story comes from Marietta, Georgia, where Floyd Martin is retiring from his neighborhood route as a mailman after more than 20 years. To help him celebrate, people on his route decorated their mailboxes, and a local journalist followed him on his last route, tweeting all the expressions of love she heard. Then, the Twitter magic happened. A GoFundMe was established, and people from across the country celebrated Mr. Martin by donating so he can have a trip to Hawaii. And next, we celebrate the thousands of Americans who honored the fallen service members this Memorial Weekend in their own communities. It was so extraordinary to see veteran cemetaries across the country share images of hundreds and even sometimes thousands of volunteers placing flags to respectfully remember our country's service members who died. In Boston, more than 37,000 flags were on display, one for every Massachusetts service member who had died. In Arlington, over 250,000. That's extraordinary. So let's let these extraordinary acts for others inspire us. Let them motivate us to do our own good in our own extraordinary service with extra love. That is how the goodness spreads. When you do service to others or volunteer in your own communities, share it with us and we'll celebrate it for you. You can email your story to podcast@freedomsringusa.org or just share it on social media with the hashtag Extraordinary Acts for Others. Thank you again for listening to this podcast this season. It's been amazing to see it grow and we can't wait to get back in September. If you want to do something extraordinary for us, hit the subscribe button, rate us, and leave us a review because that really helps us reach more people. Because we really do believe that people are good and do extraordinary things in their communities every day. We want to celebrate that. So we invite you to join us and follow at Freedom's Ring USA or become a member at freedomsringusa.org.